Ms. Catherine, floor is yours, please.
Thank you so much. Firstly, I would like to just thank all of the speakers for their inputs and their really important, informative discussion that we have had over this past hour. I will keep my comments quite short and brief, and just say that I really think, as an activist, I came to Azad Jammu Kashmir exactly a year ago. And coming from a country like South Africa, our history, a very dark and evil past of history. And I think it's important to know that a history such as ours means that we look back, and as a young democracy of only 25 years, we have to analyze where have we come from, where are countries such as, territories such as Kashmir, Western Sahara, what are the lessons that can be learned from South Africa? Currently, we see this evil occupation of Kashmir happening. We see the lockdown, which has been over 1 year, where the media blockade has happened, where the violent lockdown on Kashmiri people has seen so many people lose their lives. We have seen people not being able to connect with their families, having no idea what is going on either. I think that coming from a country like South Africa, on a continent of Africa where there are so many different kinds of conflicts, but only one colony, which is the colony of Western Sahara, under military occupation by Morocco, we see that the United Nations has not only been the only body that can serve us and can give us the answers that we need. As an activist, the contribution that I would like to make today is that we have to fight to continue keeping the issues such as the Kashmiri issue, the question of Western Sahara, the issue of Palestine, and many others. We need to keep them on the agenda. We need to ensure that conversations and debates like this, forums such as these happening today, need to continue to happen on a vast platform and on a continual basis. We need to make sure that awareness and education are a priority, continuing to educate and create awareness of what is the issue of Kashmir. We understand that the media globally is controlled by an elite few who are trying to ensure that the world only understands what they want them to know. So therefore, the Kashmiri issue is then not gone out and about on global networks and platforms. It is given very minimal mainstream media coverage and publicity. We need grassroots level organizations, the academics. We need social movements and bodies, not only in countries such as Pakistan, countries around the region where you live, but regions around the world, to continue to talk about the issue of Kashmir. 5 years ago, I started to work at the United Nations Human Rights Council, specifically working on the illegal occupation and the fight for self-determination of the Sahrawi people of Western Sahara. And it was there that I first came into contact with Kashmiri activists and the conflict in Kashmir. Understanding the Indian occupied Kashmir and what is going on behind the black curtain that we don't see, the violations of human rights, the torture, understanding very, very specifically the mutilation, the torture, the rape of women and children is something that horrified me. It horrified me because far down south on the other tip of Africa, in South Africa where I come from, this is not an issue that is brought to the fore. It is not something that we continually talk about or even hear about. And so minimal information is known about this specific conflict. And so I would urge those who are participating in today's discussion, those that will watch this video thereafter, I would really encourage you to not only share the information that you have taken away from today, but continue to share it in a way that you can educate your own communities. Social media and technology has allowed us, I'm on the other end of the world and I'm able to be on this platform with you. And as an activist, I can say that we need to be able to not only be doing things through the channels of what we need to fight for through the United Nations. We must not only work as academics in a certain silo, we need to cross-reference all the work that we're doing. And we need to broaden the understanding of the issue of Kashmir far across different spectrums of people, social community organizations around the world need to start talking about the illegal occupations that still exist in the year 2020. It cannot be that in the year 2020, torture, murder, rape, mutilation continues to happen on our watch. We see ourselves as such a forward-moving human race, and yet we are destroying the lives of people every single day. But they go by unknown. Names of people who die, Kashmiri people who die, go unknown to the world. It cannot be that the global media agenda is only about what serves a few and those that have money and power. We cannot allow global powerhouses such as India to control what is in the media. We need to put a stop to this. And the only way we will do it is from the ground up. And therefore, I would encourage you to continue using your platforms. Everyone on this video call and everyone who will watch this specific intervention has access to some kind of platform, be it Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Continue to share information. Let us dispel fake information and fake news that continues to fill and flood all of our timelines. We need to all be activists from where we are. The first speaker, the professor, first mentioned that the use of correct maps, and this is vitally important. In my fight and our fight for Western Sahara and the self-determination of the Sahrawi people, maps are incredibly important. Every time we see an incorrect map that is either up on a wall or is printed somewhere, we need to take action. We need to ask for the removal of those incorrect maps. We need to make sure that we're putting out the correct information that the world needs to see. We need to be ones that are telling the stories, because if we continue to wait, as mentioned, this is the longest protracted occupation in modern history. How can it be that this continues to happen? We can send a man to the moon, but we are unable to ensure the inalienable right of self-determination for the Kashmiri people, for the Sahrawi people, for the Palestinians, and the list goes on. So I would encourage you all to continue being activists from the corners that you live in. It is important that we keep constant communication. We need to ensure that we are communicating correct information. We're using the WhatsApp groups that are available to us to constantly share news that goes out with a broader spectrum of people. Let us widen our circle. Let us ensure that the next time that we meet under this wonderful forum, and to the organizers of this forum, I thank you. Shukriya, this is so important, but let us continue. Let us do this again in some weeks' time, but let us make sure that we have expanded this specific platform. As an activist who fights for human rights and social justice, it is important for me to see that more people know about the Kashmiri conflict, that more people are aware. It must be that when people see a news article or paging through a newspaper, depending on where in the world you are, there should be a column that talks about specific issues. You are on the ground and need to tell your stories. And as an activist, I would encourage that, because I can only learn from you to be able to do so much more, to use the platforms I have to continue working and fighting and bringing life to the specific issue. There are the legal issues, the political issues, and the political issues need to be at the forefront and need to be what we push when we're sitting at the UN Security Council, when we're sitting at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. But more so, we need to ensure that each and every one of us has this information at the tips of our hand, that we're able to share and disseminate facts, figures, understanding what is happening. It is only because I've sat in those rooms at the United Nations and sat in the Human Rights Council for so many years that I've understood and seen the violent conflict of Indian occupied Kashmir. I have seen for myself. I've been to Azad Jammu Kashmir, and I've seen there what is happening. I've seen how the Kashmiri people there live much in a safe environment. They're protected. I felt safe. I was not threatened once. I did not feel like my life was in danger or in harm. I understood because I sat and lived with the people on the ground. I sat with generations of families who have been outside of, contact with their families in Indian occupied Kashmir. They cried and they broke down when they could not explain in words the feelings of the torture that they could not make contact with their family that were in Indian occupied Kashmir. The amount of lives that have been lost are far too many. But it is up to us to now be the voice of reason, to share what we know because we have been there or because we have heard the stories firsthand. So to each and every one of you who has continued to be a part of this platform, who continues to bring voice to the Kashmiri conflict and issue, I applaud you and I ask you to continue doing this hard work. Many of the people on this call know a great deal more than I do. And as the speaker before me said, he's only just a student still, as am I. But I'm a student willing to learn, to listen, and to grow with this information, and to use the platforms I have available to me as an activist and as a global figure who is given international platforms. Let us continue to give voice to the absolutely horrifying realities that continue to happen in Indian occupied Kashmir. To those who are on the ground and who continue to suffer every single day, we keep you in our thoughts and prayers. And inshallah, one day this will come to an end. In our lifetime, we will see justice. We will see that this conflict is one that we talk of in a past tense, in a history format, where we are able to talk of the work done by the martyrs of the Kashmiri people. Shukriya.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inspiring comments. We owe a lot to you, Miss Catherine. Thank you once again. So formally our session is end. So I would request all our participants, if they have questions, a quick 5 questions we'll be taking. If they have questions, please raise your hand, or we can keep a mic open for them. If any question for our distinguished guests, especially Raja Sajad and Miss Catherine is here. Earlier, I have received 3-4 questions, but I guess they were for Professor Sikandar Shah. So one more question is, how should Kashmir be given observer status at OIC? Miss Catherine, is one question.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm unmuted now. Just very quickly on the observer status, it is important. The observer status is something that is very difficult to obtain, but it needs to be obtained via forums or civil society movements that exist. If you have your paperwork, I would insist and encourage you to set up observer status. It's a long process. Go through that process, let them turn you down, continue. Ensure that you try to, through your organizations or NGOs, human rights bodies, whatever it might be, try to get that observer status. It is very important, and it's something that we need more people who are lobbying specifically on the Kashmiri issue. We need them to be more participative in these environments and within these forums. These forums don't always bring us what we need, but unfortunately we need to be inside of the system to be able to bring about change. Somebody else also mentioned within the comments and made a very important comment around scholars and the coordination of scholars. This comes from Raja Khan. We must explore new avenues of collaboration, collaborative efforts across regions, across universities, across NGOs, different civil society movements. Collaboration and coordinated efforts are extremely important, and there should be several coordinated efforts when we talk about international solidarity campaigns around the issue of Kashmir, and we must ensure that we do all that we can to connect with each other and to make that possible.
I would like to ask a question, if that's okay. Thank you. First of all, I would like to say thank you so much for all our speakers today. It was quite a spectacle to hear you guys speak. Ms. Catherine Constantinides, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly.
That was
Um,
perfect.
I
Thank you.
read, I've read about your work, and your portfolio is very impressive as an ambassador for South Africa and taking up the case of Western Sahara. I wanted to ask you, what is, in your honest opinion, the reason for how in these ambassadorial roles, Kashmir has been eluded by many activists and international, in general, the international community as a whole. What could be the reason for? Is it the mistakes of the parties concerned, or the people that have been perhaps projecting the issue correctly to the world?
Afzal, thank you for the question, and it's an important question. I would not know the specifics around these global figures or potential candidates who have been kind of brought in to speak and to be ambassadors for this issue. However, I do think that the one thing that becomes a really, really important element moving forward, I can't speak for the past and for people the Kashmiri people have worked with in the past, but moving forward, I think the most important thing is to be able to drive awareness and education. Not enough people truly understand the conflict of Kashmir. Not enough people understand the political role players within the space. And I think that a lack of information and education outside of the academic arena, sometimes people get overwhelmed by the academics of it. The politics of it are shared in such an academic way that people, you almost miss connecting with the people. You almost miss being able to express to them from person to person what this conflict is actually about. I had the privilege of going to Kashmir. I had the privilege of engaging with Kashmiri people with across generations, young people at the University of Kotli. I spent time with older generations of people who were out in the mountainous areas, and it was a great privilege to listen to them, their firsthand experiences, because reading a book or reading an online article, I could not have understood their pain and struggle in the same way. But what I do now have is the opportunity to share their struggle, their pain, and their suffering because I was able to connect with them person to person. So when I go out, and as I mentioned, as a human rights defender, my work has really been because I understand an issue or a conflict because I've been there myself. I try to learn as much as I can from the people that I'm working with, never to replace their voice, but to be a voice alongside with them. And working with the Kashmiri activists at the United Nations over these many years, I've had the privilege to be able to learn from them. And constantly, I'm a student in this specific field of the conflict of Kashmir. And each and every time I engage, I'm engaging in order to learn. But I think that education and actually the fundamental issues of why there is a conflict in the first place, what happened, where other role players such as the United Kingdom played a role many, many years ago in the divisions and geographical divisions that they brought in. All of those elements, all of those pieces of the puzzle need to be put down in a way that people understand, but they are not overwhelmed. Because people who are not in the human rights space, are not in the justice space, sometimes become overwhelmed by the academics and the politics of an issue that they almost withdraw. So I would really say it's really about education and awareness and having those one-on-one conversations. I have no doubt that the world at large would be horrified at what is happening in Kashmir, but they're just not aware. And often, and even on the issue of Western Sahara, I always say, and this stands true for for the issue of Kashmir, people don't know what they don't know. And so they're not looking for information on Kashmir because they just don't know what is happening on the ground. And so even when, the organizers for today reached out to me to be a part of this, I was so grateful that they sent me that direct message on Twitter. They connected with me. When you tag me in things that I can share with a larger audience, I want us to be able to engage moving forward. I don't have all the answers, but I am certainly on a journey learning, growing, and ensuring I do all that I can, because this conflict should not continue. And for it to be the longest conflict in modern history is unacceptable. This is something we should be ashamed of as a generation and as a global community that continues to push forward to make strides in humanity. Yet this issue still continues in our lifetime.
Thank you so much.
Very much.